Hey investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey, and as you probably know, I recently attended the 2023 Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, and I recapped highlights of my trip in a recent vlog. So feel free to check out that video if you want to learn about how it's like to attend the Berkshire Hathaway meeting. And as I also mentioned in that video, I said that I would have future videos discussing more in detail what I thought about some of the answers and wisdom that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger shared during the actual meeting question and answer sessions from the morning and afternoon. And I started going back and re-listen to some of these lessons. And today I'm going to focus on two key lessons that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger highlighted, especially as it relates to how you can succeed as an investor and also an individual despite disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence changing a lot of things. But there's some things that aren't changing even with the rise of many incredible technologies like AI and robotics. So if you enjoy learning from some of the best investors of all time, I hope you'll like and subscribe to my video and YouTube channel, and let's get into some of the wisdom that Buffett and Munger shared. Today, I'm going to reflect on two questions that shareholders had that had to do with disruptive technology and their potential impact on the stock market and value investing. And the first question went like this, where they asked, as far as AI and robotics continue to advance, what do you believe will be the positive and negative impacts of this technology on both the stock market and society as a whole? And are there any specific industries and companies that you believe will be most impacted? And Charlie Munger answers by saying that if you look at the BYD electric vehicle manufacturer in China, there's robotics everywhere and that will continue to advance. But Charlie Munger also said that he's personally skeptical about all of the hype that's going into artificial intelligence. And he said that he thinks that old-fashioned intelligence works just as well. So even though there's a lot going on that's really exciting with AI and robotics, nothing replaces good old-fashioned thinking for yourself independently and being able to arrive at your own conclusions. And then Warren Buffett continued on in talking about how Bill Gates showed him some of the latest maybe advances in AI technology. And even though Buffett needed to take some baby steps as far as learning about it, because it might be a little bit too advanced for his 92-year-old brain, as he was kind of mentioning, he was saying how remarkable it is. But the only thing is that AI can't tell jokes yet. So by the time we maybe get to the point where an AI computer can make jokes that can be funnier than even a comedian, maybe that's when a lot of us will run out of jobs. But until that point, it looks like comedians still have plenty of job opportunities. And that joke aside, it looks like a lot of opportunity will still exist in spite of whatever AI might do to hopefully make the world more productive and help us do our jobs better instead of taking over our jobs completely. And also Buffett goes on to say how nothing in AI will replace Ajit Jain, who is a master of Geico and insurance. And then also, even though it's awesome to be able to have these fancy technologies, Buffett's also a little bit worried because we wouldn't be able to uninvent it, much like how during World War II, we had to invent the atomic bomb. And that was very important for some of the aims the United States had and the Allies, and in order to defeat the Axis powers that needed to happen. And maybe it's for the benefit to keep other world powers at bay these days, that nuclear threat still is very much top of mind for many of us in society. But it also comes with some of its own concerns, where the more that tensions escalate between countries, the more that someone could be teetering over the edge, and you wouldn't want that to happen. So even though there's great promise with technological advancements, there's also a lot of responsibility that we have to take on in order to avoid worst case scenario, because a crisis in the planet is not what we want to have. And barring that, Berkshire will be able to survive no matter what advancements in technologies there are. And also, Buffett made a really good point in saying that with AI, it can change everything in the world except how men think and behave. And that's a big step to take. And even though it's a difficult question for Buffett and Munger to have an exact answer to, you have to think about the psychological impact on human beings. Will AI really change how a lot of our human psychology is? And I think that that's also a bit of a leap to take if we really think that AI will transform fundamentally how humans behave, given our multi-thousand-year-old brains. So we ourselves have a lot of old technology up in here, and no amount of AI is necessarily going to supplant what our kind of deep-rooted human behaviors are like. So it's definitely something worthwhile to ponder and think about how we can leverage AI to our advantage, because ultimately Buffett is pointing out that there will be plenty of opportunities to those who are able to use their old-fashioned sense of intelligence. Continuing on a similar vein, another shareholder asked, given the rise of disruptive technologies that can improve productivity significantly, and AI being one of them, how do you envision the future of value investing in this new era? And what adaptations or new principles do you think investors should adopt? And any recommendations for investors to remain successful in this rapidly changing landscape? And with that, Charlie Munger had a very interesting answer that wasn't super optimistic, but you have to remember that he means it very lovingly in his own curmudgeonly way. So Charlie responded by saying that he's glad to take this one, and he thinks that value investors are going to have a harder time now that there's so many of them competing for a diminished bunch of opportunities. So Charlie's advice to value investors is to get used to making less. And Warren Buffett tried butting in here a little bit to try to put a little bit more of a positive spin on this response, because that could make you feel a little bit down on your luck. If you feel like you're trying to figure out investing and how are you possibly able to invest like these guys if maybe the opportunities are maybe not as plentiful as they once were. But Warren Buffett tries to give us some hope by saying that, you know, even when they were younger, they were making less and they never thought they could manage $508 billion. But then Warren Buffett also continues in saying that he would argue that there are going to be plenty of opportunities. And part of the reason there are going to be that many opportunities is because the tech doesn't make any difference for any of that. You have to look at how the world's changed in the years since 1942, when Warren Buffett started, and he'd say, how does a kid that doesn't know anything about airplanes or engines and cars or electricity come away with figuring out investing opportunities? So you have to think that back then, he didn't know that much either, just like all of us are trying to get to learn about different industries and businesses. So he's trying to say that it's still possible for us to find investing opportunities as long as we're willing to learn. And also, he said, what gives you opportunities is other people doing dumb things. So in the 58 years that Berkshire has been running, he would say that there's been a great increase in the number of people doing dumb things, and they do big dumb things. And the reason they do it to some extent is because they can get money from other people so much easier than when Buffett and Munger started. So it's kind of amazing how he exemplifies how some people could start 10 or 15 dumb insurance companies in the last 10 years, and you could become rich at it if you were adroit at it, whether the business succeeded or not, as long as the underwriters and lawyers got paid. And it's done nowadays on a large scale, which maybe couldn't have been done 58 years ago because maybe people couldn't raise as much money back then as they can now. But he says that they couldn't do some of the dumb things that they wanted to do back then, and he thinks that's for the better. But he says that a lot of investing has disappeared from this huge capitalistic market that anybody can play in, but that the big money is in selling other people ideas. So I think what Buffett is getting at here is that a lot of people in maybe wealth management have been making a lot of money by offering their advice and in return getting fees. So it doesn't matter whether their advice actually yields returns for investors that they're counseling or that are their clients, but they just get some fee for offering ideas about potential stock opportunities. So he said that the money isn't in actually outperforming, say, an index fund, but in just giving that advice. So he says, in contrast, if you don't run too much money, like if you're a retail or individual investor and you have small amounts of money, you could do pretty well for yourself. Whereas for Berkshire Hathaway, they have so much money that they're in charge of that it's a lot harder for them to have as good of a money-making opportunity as people who have less amounts of money, like probably you and I. So we still have a great amount of opportunity to do fairly well for ourselves and to not be too gloomy, even though he said that Charlie might have differed a little bit on the subject, and he likes to be more optimistic by telling Charlie we'll find something. So he thinks that they're both kind of right. Also, Charlie Munger points out that there's so many smart people trying to outsmart one another, and it's a radically different world than when they started, but yet Buffett contends that these people are trying to outsmart each other in arenas that you don't have to play in. So if you don't want to play that same game in, say, Wall Street, playing with wealth management, maybe you can make it on your own in a way that's not a commonly beaten path. So if you take the road less traveled, you may have a much better chance than if you try to play in a game that's too crowded. And so, yeah, another point Buffett makes is the world is overwhelmingly short-term focused. So a lot of institutional Wall Street managers are just focusing on a short amount of time, maybe let's say between a few quarters to up to a year's worth of time that they need to be able to perform. And so if you can have a longer investment time frame, at least 5 to 10, if not infinite amount of years into the future, you might have better results than these people on Wall Street who are playing a more short-term minded game. So if you keep that in mind, you're bound to be more successful because, as many studies have shown, the less that you try to trade and the more that you just stay firmly invested for many years at a time, you're more likely to compound your investments over the long term and ultimately end up pretty okay. So I hope that among some of these lessons, we should take away that AI and other disruptive technologies shouldn't scare us, but we can use them to our advantage if we can understand them. And otherwise, try not to jump over anything that's too hard to understand, as Buffett and Munger have preached for years. They just try to hop over 6-inch bars instead of 6-foot bars. And if we can do the same, we'll probably also be all right in the long term. So that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like and subscribe. And I'll catch you up on more deep wisdom from Buffett and Munger in the next video. Till next time.